Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and it's that time of the year, dear viewers. We have received the last update of the game, along with the last batch of ships for the year. So it's time to go back through 2024 and go over the top 5 ships of 2024 in World Warships. Now, when I say top 5 ships of 2024, I do not mean the top 5 best ships of 2024. That's coming in a separate video. These ships are, well, it's like Time's Person of the Year. Their Person of the Year is not necessarily a good person. It's someone who had a large impact on the world one way or another, and that's the same approach I take with this video. If you are a returning viewer, you should be familiar. I've done this every year for the past like 3 or 4 years at this point, but just to clarify at the beginning of this video, these are not necessarily the best ships of the year. They're the ships that personify, what happened in World Warships this year. They're kind of an indication of the direction that the game is going in. That's more of what we're talking about when we say top 5 ships of 2024. Again, the top 5 best ships will come in another top 5 video, so if you're on the lookout for that, keep your eyes peeled on the channel for that. But before we get into the list, make sure you drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz. It helps out on the YouTube side of things. But now, let's go ahead and get on into it. Coming in at number 5, we have the Tier 10 Commonwealth cruiser, the Cerberus, representing not only herself, but the entire Commonwealth line. This was the year that we finally, after years of asking, got the Commonwealth tech tree added to the game. We had a couple of premium ships here and there added to the Commonwealth nation throughout the years, but we finally got a proper tech tree for these ships. And this was a line that was something that many were asking for, but many were also saying that, if we are going to do a Commonwealth line, it's just pretty much going to be a copy-paste, UK line, right? I mean, that's pretty much what you're going to get, because that's what a lot of the ships that were fielded by these Commonwealth nations were. They were ships built by the British for these nations, or ships that were sold to these nations or transferred to these nations. So we kind of sort of got that, but they managed to give these ships a little bit enough of a twist in their designs and their playstyle to make them different enough from the British ships. Now, granted, what we wound up getting was a line of pretty run-of-the-mill cruisers. I mean, up and down the line, they are just heavy cruisers that are pretty decent at, well, doing heavy cruiser things, which are, just HE spamming from mid-range, which, again, take your pick of heavy cruiser nation that has that. That's a lot of them, right? Of course, they are probably best compared to the British heavy cruisers, because the Cerberus plays just like the Goliath, but without, the super heal, and they do get the ASW consumable for detecting submarines, so that's pretty cool, although it's a little lackluster in its application, I find. But it's a solid line of cruisers nonetheless, in my humble opinion, and I am of course glad that they are finally here in game. So that's pretty cool. We've had a lot of players from these countries waiting for their ships to finally make it in the game, and we finally got that this year. So all in all, they're a pretty welcome addition to the game, if they were a little underwhelming. But having a line that's a little bit better with dealing with submarines is very much welcome. Like we said, they have the ASW consumable to where they can detect submarines. They also get an additional charge of their ASW aircraft per not per tier, but they either get a faster reload or an additional charge of their ASW aircraft compared to ships of the same tier. So that's pretty cool, right? And then if you do build into them, if you want to spend the credits building into the modules and such and the commander skills, they are really good at dealing with submarines. But in my experience, it's kind of like AA ships there, right? You spend all your credits and your XP building into the AA modules and the AA commander skills, and then naturally you get one round with a CV every like 10 rounds. Same with the Cerberus here. From my experience, when I play the ship and I want to run to a submarine, either I don't get a submarine match, or if I do get a submarine match, the guy's on the other side of the map from me, right? So it's kind of like that, but they are better at dealing with submarines than your average same tier cruiser, so you gotta give them that. But yes, a welcome addition to the game if it's a little stale, right? Alright, going down to number 4, we have the Tier 7 Premium British battleship, the Rodney, another highly requested ship that we have been waiting so long for that finally made its way into the game, was the Rodney, sister to the Nelson. Now, we got the Nelson years and years ago as a Tier 7 free XP ship. Imagine that, right? A Tier 7 free XP ship in 2024. That would have been something. But of course, the Rodney was not that. She was sold outright during the D-Day event. And she is, well, in my opinion, a little underwhelming as far as like random battles is concerned. They did manage to, and I will give them credit for that, make it an entirely different ship from the Nelson. Nelson is essentially, well, a Tier 7 Conqueror, but, you know, since she does have 16-inch guns at Tier 7, you get a lot more overmatching capabilities in the Nelson at her tier than you do with the Conqueror at its tier. So it's, you know, plays fairly similar, though. You know, it's really squishy, but it gets a super heal, has 16-inch guns, really good HE, really good AP, and you can, you know, kind of just choose what, you know, you do one farm Witherer this round in addition to getting high caliber, right? So that's the Nelson, a pretty passively played mid-range-ish. I guess you can get in there close if you really want to with the Nelson. But yeah, you just sit there, spam HE, punch through things nose with the AP. The Rodney is much more geared toward brawling, which, you know, when I read that in the dev blog, I was pretty excited about that. But she has the exact same armor scheme as the Nelson, which is understandable, but when you give, you know, Nelson a little bit of a tune-up and say, okay, now go run at enemy ships at close range, that can work at Tier 7 and in Tier 7 matches, which is why, you know, the Rodney's big saving grace is that she's really good at brawls and such. But when you are dealing with random battles and you're getting up to Tier 9 and Tier 8, where there's a whole lot of ships that can just punch right through your nose in terms of battleships, and then a whole hell of a lot even more ships that can pin your extremities, because, again, when you get up to Tier 8, everyone at Tier 8 Plus is trying to pin 32mm of armor with their HE shells, and, well, if they can pin 32, they can basically just bully the Rodney, unless they just want to shoot at her belt for some reason. Yeah, that's not really a great time in the Rodney. So, yeah, it's a little lackluster there. And they did give her the Soviet battleship dispersion formula, where allegedly, the closer you are to the target, the better your dispersion will be. It's most noticeable from like 11 kilometers in, although in my experience with the Rodney, you'll close to like 8-7 kilometers and the dispersion will still be god-awful. You'll still be throwing half of your shells in the water from 8 kilometers away, which is just like, why? You know, I took this giant risk taking a Rodney, which again has the Nelson's armor scheme, which again you can get sit out from the side very easily if someone catches your flat broadside. Yes, if you angle, yeah, it'll bounce, but I mean, when you're brawling and running at enemy ships, that's, you know, it's a little hard to do, right? So you're getting punched through the nose, you're getting punched in the citadel, and then you finally get within, you know, supposedly the good range of your guns, where the mechanic's going to take over, and, you know, you're going to have glorious dispersion, and you toss half of your shells in the water. That's kind of frustrating. She did get her torpedoes finally, you know, her bound-mounted torpedoes. They are really good. They have an alpha damage rating of 29,000 and change, so those do hit pretty hard. And she does get a quick cooldown time of the heal, and she does get her historically accurate engine boost, right? And that's all well and fancy and nice. And again, if you're playing Tier 7 ranked or brawls, yeah, the Rodney's pretty good there. But for random battles, it's just kind of underwhelming in my opinion. So, yeah, you know, we finally got the Rodney, a nice historical ship, and it was a little bit of a letdown in my opinion. Again, as far as random battles are concerned, yeah, it's good in ranked, yeah, it's good in brawls, but god, it really should have been a Tier 8. It really should have been a Tier 8 in my opinion, and that's something that a lot of other players said as well. And, you know, if you just give her 32mm armor plating, don't touch the HP, I think you would have had a real win here. Like, literally just give it 32mm of armor, put it at Tier 8, give it slightly more accurate guns, and I think it would have been fantastic. But unfortunately, that did not happen. And we got the Rodney as is, so yeah. Alright, going on our way down to number 3. One of the ships that definitely made the biggest waves in the game this year is our number 3 slot. And that's the Tier 10 German hybrid cruiser, the Hildebrand. Now, the Hildebrand, man, our first Tier 10 German large cruiser. We could have got an Aegir with another turret, or even a Siegfried with another turret, or one of the many large cruiser designs that the Germans came up with in the 30s and 40s, but no, we got this thing, this monstrosity that even breaks the mold as far as hybrid ships go in World Warships. So the Hildebrand is basically an Aegir with a flight deck welded to its back in exchange for its number 3 turret. And man, this thing is so stupid. So if you build into it, your torpedo bombers will have a regeneration time of a little bit over a minute. Which, I mean, in most cases, you taking off from the ship, which the second you hit the button to launch your planes, the timer starts running down. By the time you fly to your target, drop your munitions, and warp back to your ship, you've got maybe 10 seconds left before your torpedo bombers are ready to go again. So you're just going to sit there and launch your torpedo bombers again. And then if you have Lucian's and you pop his aircraft replenishment skill, you really don't have to wait too long for your planes after that. So this is a cruiser who can basically launch a flight of torpedo bombers just about every minute and change, which is absurd. So what happens with the Hildebrand is that she's a much better aircraft carrier than she is a cruiser. You see, the way most of the other hybrid ships go in game, they are their base class first and foremost. The Kearsarge, it is a battleship with a flight deck. It is not a CV with guns. Same with like the Tone and the Issei. They're still meant to perform their base ship duties first, and then use the aircraft to supplement their, base ship class damage. So the Hildebrand is a CV first and a cruiser second. So that's kind of scary as far as what we might be seeing in the future for future hybrid ships and such. So that shook things up. The second thing too, which I already kind of touched on, is that we could have got again a more proper tier 10 German cruiser. Again, many, myself included, were waiting for our tier 10 Aegir or tier 10 Siegfried, or again our tier 10 Shill, right? But we got this thing instead, and it's very, very good. I mean, even myself, I am terrible at playing CVs, but I have no problem doing very well in Hildebrand. You just kind of derp into an island, keep throwing your planes at ships, and unlike a CV, you won't ever run out of aircraft in the Hildebrand because she's a hybrid ship. So they're tactical squadrons, right? So every, cooldown period or reloading period, you just get more planes. Doesn't matter if you lose all of them, if you lose none of them, doesn't matter at all. When that timer runs out, you get a full flight of planes. And then, of course, you get the Vesser, I believe they are the Vesser's HE dive bombers. So you just dump on people with that, too. Like, if you get all of your bombs with these HE dive bombers to hit, you're doing 19,000 damage and probably setting a fire, too. So it's kind of goofy, right? So that's just, it's so dumb. It also has a ton of secondaries on it and a 12.5 kilometer secondary range, which is ridiculous. On top of everything else, granted, the secondary guns aren't all that accurate. So, yeah. Then her, Aegir caliber guns, they have, I think, a 17 or a 15-second reload base. You can build into it to get it down even lower. So that's kind of dumb. But they are, granted, very inaccurate, So there is that. The whole ship's dumb. It's kind of scary that this was released, and again, it could potentially be a sign of things to come in the future of the game. So definitely earning herself a spot here on this list. All right, our number 2 slot is held by the tier 10 American battleship, the Wisconsin. American premium battleship, or special battleship, a dockyard battleship, the Wisconsin. Wisconsin and her dockyard was a bit of a home run for wargaming this year. The dockyard was very reasonable considering, what we were getting out of the dockyard. A supercharged Iowa at tier 10 with combat instructions that gives her a boost to her reload time, not only her main battery guns and her secondaries, but also to her consumables, making up for the fact that she's in fact a tier 9 ship in a tier 10 slot. But yeah, the dockyard itself was just really good. If you had picked up the West Virginia 44 earlier in the year, you got this ship completely for free because you already purchased the mid-tier reward ship for this dockyard, which was the West Virginia 44, which was a very, very sought-after ship. And Wargaming went ahead and gave it away here for free in the Wisconsin dockyard as well. So you got an excellent ship out of it. You got an excellent mid-tier reward ship. You got all the rewards for the dockyard along the way. And it's just such a lovely ship. The Wisconsin is an Iowa that's more geared towards, I don't want to say sniping, but longer range engagements. Her shells have a better air drag coefficient, so they fly through the air a little bit faster than your standard Iowa shells. And they pin a little bit better at range too, because of, some of the funny numbers they changed as far as the shell's parameters go. And again, you get the combat instructions where you can get those quick follow-up shots, once you get your bar filled up by hitting other ships. And of course, this is the third Iowa sister, right? So like the Rodney and the Commonwealth cruisers, a highly sought after ship that finally made its way into the game this year. It's a ship that I've been to as well. It's a real still ship. You can go see it in Norfolk, Virginia. It's an excellent museum ship as well. It's always wonderful when we see those real still historical ships, especially museum ships, make their way into the game. So Wisconsin, yes, again, Wargaming hit it out of the park. It's something they deserve a commendation for, in my humble opinion. One of the best dockyards we've had in a very long time. And again, just an excellent ship and a really nice ship, lovely historical ship, earning her way on this list. All right, we now come down to our number 1 slot. Speaking of real, still historical ships and ships that we have been waiting for absolutely forever, our number 1 slot is occupied by the Tier 10 Japanese aircraft carrier, the Shinano. So the Shinano is something that we actually got a peek at way back. I believe in like pre-alpha in the original. I don't know if they were even called like dev diaries or dev journal videos back in the day when they were showing the progress of the game. There was a Shinano shown on screen a couple of times, and the game came out and she didn't show up when the Japanese carrier showed up. And we know we had years and years go by, nothing. And then finally this year we got the Shinano and the Steel Will event coming in as a Tier 10 steel ship for a whopping 36,000 steel, or 30,000 steel if you use the coupon as Steel Will event. She will be joining the game as a normal steel ship after this update, so you can just wait and use your 25% off coupon to pick her up for a bit of a better discount there than what you can get her for in the Steel Will event. The Shinano, why is she a big deal? Well, she's the last launched Yami sister. We had 3 of them get launched in real life: the Yamato, the Musashi, and the Shinano. The Shinano was converted to an aircraft carrier once the Japanese Navy realized the direction that naval warfare was going. Wasn't a very good carrier because the hull was, I think, like 40% done or something like that. And it's a battleship hull. It's got all this armor. It's designed to, of course, be, a battleship and not an aircraft carrier, so she couldn't really carry that many planes. She was really just meant to be a support carrier for other carriers, right? And she kind of became a sports CV in game. Well, I guess she is a sports CV in game, you could say. No, she is actually. But anyway, so she finally made her way into the game, and she's the last Yami sister, which I think that's probably the coolest aspect about her. But in true wargaming fashion, they managed to make her a little bit different from the other Japanese CVs, and also, oddly enough, managed to add in something from her sisters, which is her ability to overmatch 32 millimeters of armor through her AP skip bombs, which is like, oh, I guess that's one way to make her feel like a Yami, right? Because the Musashi and the Yami, their guns are 18.1 inches, which allows them to overpin 32 millimeters of armor, or 460 millimeters if you want me to speak European there. But yeah, that allows them to overmatch 32 millimeters of armor because of how the armor overmatch mechanic works in game. So they gave that ability to the Shinano skip bombers, to where I guess you can still feel like you're flying a Yami everywhere, right? So that's pretty interesting. The skip bombers are a little cracked in my humble opinion, because like all the other AP armament on CVs, it doesn't really do a whole lot of damage unless it citadels the target. So in every other instance, when you hit your AP bombs on the target, you're doing pretty menial damage, but when you citadel somebody, you're probably citadeling them with like 2 or 3 of your skip bombs, and you're doing like 14,000 damage of citadel damage that can't be repaired near as much as normal damage, right? So while you may not be stacking numbers quite as easily as like the British CVs might be with all their damage over time mechanics, you are stacking serious damage with these Citadel attacks that, again, cannot be repaired near to the point of like what fire damage can, right? Although I did say in my video she wasn't great at doing damage over time, she still does get AP dive bombers, and she still gets torpedoes that are pretty nice and able to do fairly consistent damage and apply floodings to the enemy targets and such. But her HE dive bomber is actually pretty good now that I've got a little bit better at making sure they actually hit the target. So yeah, she still got it for sure. What's also really funny too is that the Shinano is finally the high tier secondary Japanese capital ship that we've been begging for forever. It's a freaking Shinano for some reason, right? So if you build into her secondaries, they have 11.5, 11 kilometer range. They're very accurate. They have Graf Zeppelin's accuracy baked in. And you can smoke yourself with your tactical squadron. So you can potentially smoke yourself in and let your secondaries go to town on some enemy destroyers. I tried to make this happen, but none of the destroyers that I tried to bait to charging my Shinano took the bait. So that's very unfortunate, right? But yeah, a ship we've been waiting for forever for. Again, a very common theme that we've seen this year with the Rodney, the Wisconsin, the Shinano, and the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth ships finally coming to the game. But, I mean, if this is what we got this year, Lord knows what we're going to get next year. But here's to it, right? So, guys, those are my top 5 ships of 2024 and World of Warships. Let me know what you guys would add to this list. What would you remove from it? Let me know all that jazz down below. So, hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way now to 65,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful Monday and wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.